basic foundation. If we're deist as a culture, it means we have a belief there is a God, but he's not involved in anything. So that would mean we'd have to trust ourselves. Right? And so as a culture, we're naturalistic, and what I mean by that is we base everything on the natural and the supernatural. And what I mean by that is we believe that natural, me touching my flesh right now, that's really reality. This other stuff, which we call the supernatural, we don't know if that's reality or not. It only comes every once in a while. We touch into it maybe once or twice a year or something like that. But really reality is this. I can see it, I can taste it, I can touch it. And it's what I would call being a natural person. Now, biblically, as we're going to look at, but I just want to give you some of it right now. Biblically, we're considered created of the dust of the earth, but we're also 100% spiritual being, which means we interact with the spirit realm constantly without realizing it. But our culture doesn't see that. We actually see spiritual activity in a deistic worldview as an event. And most of the spiritual activity that our culture literally believes in is mostly from the enemy, which is interesting. If our culture even believes in it, they always believe the enemy has full access to destroy people's lives, but God, again, is on vacation. He's not doing anything to touch people's lives. And so it's what I would call the vacation concept of spirituality. If I had a chalkboard, I'd actually draw this for you right now. A lot of people believe going to church is like going to the Bahamas. You walk through the door, and all of a sudden you're in an atmosphere where God's supposed to show up. And that's why we always say, where's God? He's at church. We act like God's in a building. And we expect God to show up we expect the Lord to show up on Sunday, maybe Sunday morning and Sunday evening. Or if we have a special service. But when we walk outside the door, we leave the Bahamas and we go into reality. And God's nowhere out there, right? And so we all, at least when I first got saved, I couldn't wait to get to church because I thought that was the only place the Lord was at. Now we have that mindset, we don't realize it's ingrained in us. So when someone comes to you and says, hey, God can speak to you while you're at work, we all look at each other and go, you're kidding me. How's that possible? I don't know how to get to that island. Yes, sir. I do. Can you wait a little bit? Okay. Let me go ahead and go on a little bit. That's the first part, is we have a worldview that's naturalistic. Then we have a worldview that's called materialistic. Okay, now what do I mean by that? Our society develops tools and information, and this creates reality in our culture. Let me put it this way. If God has left everything, and we're left to ourselves, we believe that man really is the person that resolves all conflict. So our culture believes that creating things is what reality is based on, i.e., this comment we make about other nations. They don't have PhDs, they don't have colleges, they have not developed the internet, they don't know how to make electricity, they didn't invent the car, so they're basically stupid. And that's based out of not whether they're stupid or not, it's based on a worldview of what different cultures value as ultimate reality. Our culture values this thing that we call materialism, all right? Now, do you guys realize that because of that, that influences how you see God working in your life? That's like another thing. Our society, we sell our energy and our time to gain as much surplus of buying power as possible in order to fill our lives with seemingly security of material things. Now, isn't this week a great week to actually talk about this? Someone just had several thousands of people, just had everything they've ever owned, which our culture values, taken away from them. Now we're asking, what's the value of their life? Well, see, our culture, this is where we are as a culture. We think, God really loves me. I have a $300,000 house, and I have another house in Florida. That's the blessing of the Lord in my life. And that is a certain form of blessing, but it's not at the form that God calls blessing. God does take care of you naturally, but that's not the only aspect that God blesses you. But our culture values that. And so, whether we realize it or not, people that don't have as much as other people in the church, we look at them and we go, what's wrong with that person? They must not be blessed by the Lord. Well, that's a cultural worldview, right? And it comes from what I would call our worldview in the Western culture. Then, and by the way, do you know why most of us struggle with stress in our lives? Because we're constantly living out of this worldview trying to gain as much junk as we can. Now, there was a comedian that actually, I didn't like his comedian show, but he made a statement that I thought was kind of funny one time. He said,